And today we're gonna give a little update on what we've been working on for the Avalikin lore book project, or lore wiki project. And I'm gonna talk briefly about what that is. Then our talking order is gonna be Tycho is gonna talk about Avali biochemistry. Elia is gonna be giving us a quick recap of the history stuff, if you were at the panel yesterday. And then Cress and Echo are going to talk about culture and sociology of Avali. And then me, I mostly just herd people around on the project, but I have a few niches of lore writing, mostly astrophysics. And I'm also like the sole person trying to nail down a political and economical system for the Illuminate. And after that, I'm gonna talk about what is missing, what is it that we still need, and hopefully maybe we can get a few of you involved in the project. But stick around to the end for that. So first of all, what is this project? The Avalikin lore project is an attempt to make the most extensive piece of Avali lore to date, and also license it openly. So currently it's Creative Commons by attribution, share alike, so that other people can do things with it and also contribute or just base their own works off of it. And our organizational structure is we've loosely organized ourselves into teams. I like to call them expert groups, which focus on specific aspects like culture, technology, history. And there's a lot of overlap between these groups, so there's a lot of crosstalk. And so we don't all just sit in our own separate silos, but instead all work together to the same goal. And the goal is to go as deep as possible in as many aspects of Avali lore as possible, and kind of minimize the amount of things that we only have surface level information on, and always dig just a little bit underneath the surface at least. And we will be releasing this in two forms. The first we have is a wiki, media wiki, which will be frequently updated and have everything on it as we're working on it, or as we're writing it out. But we will also be regularly pulling snapshots of the wiki, putting it into a PDF release, and it'll be more sanitized. Okay, so this is my cue to hand over to our first speaker, Tycho. Let me bring up your slides, and as usual, tell me when...
Mind left intentionally blank. Always.
Nope, that's the wrong one. There's yours. There you go.
Tried to rip all the transitions out of it, so it should be good.
I'm gonna just sit because, yeah.
Perfect.
I'm gonna sit with the creatures.
All right. Well, welcome everybody here. For those who don't know me, I'm Tycho Rock. Tycho is fine. I lead the science team, at least for right now. And I'm involved in, right now, making this as hard science as possible. I'm trained in biology and anthropology, but I try to help out wherever I can. And I'm just a singular person. We have a large group of people here. Funny and Felid are both helping me as well. So, yeah. Let's get started. Tholin? There's going to be a little delay anyways, but is what it is. All right. So, ironically enough, there's no better year than 2025 to be working on this project. Astrobiology in general, the idea of looking for extraterrestrial life, has really kind of, skyrocketed with a lot of different things. For those who don't know, we had a little interstellar visitor, the third one identified by Atlas, zoom on past the solar system. It's not aliens, I promise. It's most likely more like a comet, but still very cool. It's always exciting to see, I guess, some representation of what may be out there, even if it is just a rock being thrown across space really quickly. More in our neck of the woods, there was finally published research on asteroids in our asteroid belt that have been landed on. Samples been taken and brought back. So for a long time, as we'll go on in a second, of like, what's the origin of life? What's the origin of how all this really started? And one question is, where's the material for that coming from? Well, on these asteroids, we've actually been able to find basically amino acids, sugars, ribose. All of these things are involved in the biology of life, like already prepackaged. It's kind of crazy. It's just sitting out there in the asteroid belt. And then also, it was technically launched last year, but for all of our Avali fans wanting to see an Avalon of some kind, there is the Clipper probe that is going all the way to Europa, one of the Jovian moons. And supposedly there is at least water and water ice, they hypothesize, or ice and a water ocean. And maybe ammonia sitting on the bottom of that water ocean. It's still speculative. But the hope is once this gets here, I think it's supposed to be there next year or the year after. Jupiter's a long way. But anyways, go ahead, Tholin. It does sort of lead into the ultimate question of doing any of this at all. And that, of course, is, whether or not ammonia biochemistry can feasibly work. But before we get to that, we need to specifically talk about, well, where does it come from then? So, as I mentioned before, we have our two camps, whether or not life just kind of happened on Earth, or maybe life was transplanted from somewhere else. Like maybe a little guy was on a comet and boom, went out and then suddenly started replicating himself. Those camps are A, biogenesis, and panspermia. They're both really cool. If we want to look at the origins of the species, spore kind of takes, it kind of takes that in the panspermia direction, where literally an impactor comes and slams into a planet and a little guy pops out. So strictly, that would be it. But if we wanted to go for a more believable, more likely sense, I think that would come down to a sort of mix between the two. Bone? Now, this mix between the two is sort of, it is much more likely. A cell probably won't survive the vacuum of space, but I'll get into it. So it turns out that a long time ago in the 50s, there were two scientists, Miller and Urey, who decided to take a look and see how building blocks of life can naturally form. So they took all the respective elements that you expect to find on prebiotic Earth, heated them up like you would get when you have a whole bunch of asteroids impacting it, and then added a little spark to it. And what they found is it made complex, basically almost life. It made complex molecules, complex amino acids, the same kind of things that, ironically enough, we're still finding in the asteroids. So maybe they just got there, but maybe it has evolved. Maybe it was this sort of skyrocketing towards what we think of the primary building blocks of life being RNA, ribonucleic acid, and DNA, deoxyribonucleic acid. Go ahead, Tholin. So it is difficult to, see, is this going to fit in a Avali-like creature or in ammonia-based chemistry? Because it has to overcome quite a lot. So this is one of the more tragic slides, but it is important that we go over talking about speculative biochemistry. So again, we have an N of 0. So all I can really do is take a look and see what makes sense. And what does make sense currently is ammonia-based creatures are probably going to need to be very, very cold and under a lot of high pressure, because ammonia, it vaporizes pretty quickly, actually. And if it's not under a lot of pressure, that triple point is way down. And we don't want our Avali exploding. In general, ammonia bonds are a lot weaker. The hydrogen bonds in ammonia are a lot weaker than we see in oxygen. Also, it is less polar, so it's more difficult for these molecules to kind of form naturally into large structures that you would expect to see in biotic life. And so, with all that being said, ultimately, we're looking at what I would expect to be probably a 60% ammonia to 40% water mixture is much more likely. By doing that, the freezing point goes way down and the boiling point goes way up, which means we have a chance to actually have stable functional life in there, tholin, and that works quite a lot. But like we had been talking about with RNA and DNA, so we have our preconditions here. What exactly are we going to be looking at? So primarily, I'm functioning more on what is that primary building block. What are these nucleic acids? Well, turns out RNA and DNA don't do very well in an ammonia-based solution at all. And so we're going to have to find something else. So especially the sugary bits of them tend to break off first. So we have a whole bunch of synthesized, not necessarily found in nature yet, nucleic acids. And so we have all of our sugary bits here that are kind of an extension of RNA and DNA, but largely don't change that much on that aspect. Again, if we're going to have something that actually is able to stand this mixture, it's going to be non-sugary. So using glycol is one thing. There's one that's more fluorinated. We can consider using that. But ultimately, I like to think of like Occam's razor, right? Maybe the most obvious one, the most likely one, is probably the one that would happen. And in this case, it's called peptide nucleic acid, tholin. So what is that? So in a lot of ways, peptide nucleic acid is much more simple than RNA. It is a less complex molecule. It's less long. It is structurally sound. In fact, it is very resistant to change. It does a lot of neat things like for a lore project like this. In fact, it basically uses the same nucleotides. They're just slightly turned into an acetic acid version of them. And not only that, it can actually pair with DNA and RNA, which is super cool. A lot of research is being done on this right now, actually. Again, 2026 will be even a better year to be doing this kind of stuff. Because right now, this is being used for researching cures for Huntington disease and lots of genetic conditions. Basically, the ability to just kind of put a strand of DNA or RNA on something and kind of turn something off, or in this case, PNA. And ironically enough, it can actually form a triple helix. So it can form not just double helix, but there'll be a secondary strand that enters it and makes it a nice little triage shape. And, we love our triage, but I'll talk about that here in a second. So let's see. What can I say about a triple helix? Now, it is pretty close to what we see normally with a double helix. Like for those who have taken biology before, you have your 4 nucleotides that all interact with each other. But it turns out, under certain cases with certain nucleic acids, you can actually wrap a third one in there. It doesn't have that same Watson-Crick bind. Instead, it uses a different face and has a hydrogen bond to it. And it kind of adds a little bit else to it. It creates one less surface for things to bind to. It enters better stability. It makes it less likely to break apart in more acidic environments, more basic environments in this case. It also allows for potentially more expression. This is an open species, and I'm not here to try to negotiate what exactly you want to do and want to make with your creativity. And so having in lore a reason why there is some differences, sometimes wild differences, is huge. The fact that third strand adding what it's known as pleiotropy, basically when another gene kind of has a secondary function and the expression ends up being a little bit different. And that's super cool. It's super cool for a species like this. It's also super cool in life in general. It not only makes it more secure and more stable, but potentially more likely, honestly. All right, tholin. So I'm actually quite happy with this, considering we're expecting Avalon at this time to be kind of maybe a little more or less radioactive. It's got a very hot sun and, it is under ice and it's very cooled, but what exactly is happening? So I'll walk you through that. So we have our nucleic acid. We have our PNA. Well, hopefully it becomes a triplex PNA. But we have to walk through some steps to do that. Now, that involves, again, all these organic prebiotic molecules getting down onto Avalon. And then they kind of do their thing through radiation and sun. They start bouncing around and popping and boop, 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 boop. Suddenly you got RNA. RNA is not just a nucleic acid that is the building block of life. It also is an enzyme. It also catalyzes other reactions. And so, Yes, I said RNA. Well, that's wild. I thought we just said that wasn't going to work. Well, that's because early Avalon had a ton of water on it. In fact, it's possible that Avalon had mostly water on it. Well, that's weird, but stay with me. Again, with Occam's razor, I am saying that the most likely thing to happen is probably what would happen. So it starts just like we expect Earth to have started. You have your organic molecules evolve into RNA, then they become even more complex. They start creating things like ribosomes, which are sort of like these creation structures that you see in most simple cells. Start building more complex proteins, and things are going great, and they're about to form a cell, and everything's going to be great, except Tholin, what happens next? Well, PNA's got to get in there somewhere. Now, there is a theory that PNA may have already naturally formed on its own during all of this, but I think it's much more likely, considering what we see in nature, that there's going to be a selective pressure. Something's going to happen to make PNA become dominant. Well, the ammonia's got to get in there somehow. So, Tholin, I propose that our first major selective pressure on what would be biotic life in Avalon would be, let's call it a great nitrification event. Something where it all starts watery and nice, as we know here, and then suddenly through maybe cryovolcanoes, I promise you it's not that cool. It's just an upwelling of stuff from underneath that it's cold. It's not lava. Say ammonia, perhaps the sun is very hot and starts melting ice that we see on the surface and starts dumping a whole bunch of ammonia. And suddenly there's a panic to, under the selective pressure, adapt. And that's where we potentially see maybe RNA or maybe what would be the beginnings of DNA really try to figure out what they're going to do. And so I think this basically extinction event where RNA-based life, even though it's not even truly life yet, happens. Go ahead, Tholin. And so I'll walk it along all of this. I know that's a lot, but again, we're just starting small. I want this to be as hard science as it can be, as stable of a foundation before we do quite a lot on top of it. So I'll walk you through what I expect. In my mind, and then the team between Funny and Feel It, I expect these impactors to have hit Avalon, that in these water oceans, things like RNA involved, complex proteins, ribosomes, they come about, but then a great nitrification event, either through ice or through something else, melts and makes the ocean a lot more ammonia heavy, a lot more, hopefully up to 60%. And through all that, it has to adapt. So we brought up that PNA is kind of sticky, right? It likes to stick to other things. And so essentially you have PNA wrapping around RNA, which is doing all this replication, and then hopefully keeping it intact. And then slowly over time, replacing part of it until it's all just PNA. And at that point, we have a stable molecule in Avalon capable of creating biotic life, which is huge. That ultimately gives us exactly what we need to move forward. Go ahead, Tholin. And so what are our future steps on this project? It's a complex project, and honestly took a lot of time just to get here. Again, I wanted to make sure it was something that was feasible, understandable, something that was plausible. So just walking through it briefly, the hardest part of all of this is going to be the molecular biology part. Like, what does a cell look like in an Avali? Does it use a normal cell wall made of fat? Probably not. Fat doesn't do well in ammonia. Does it use the same organelles? What does photosynthesis look like? How does it make energy? Does it require oxygen? Does it use adenosine triphosphate, the cellular energy that we see on terrestrial species? And we all know Avalon for being a somewhat purpley planet. Well, where's that purple coming from? Chlorophyll is green. So maybe there's a Avalon-like chlorophyll, like retinol, or there's plenty of them out there. So there's a lot of places to potentially go, Tholin. And so I guess in broad strokes, ultimately what we want to do is not just have this hard science part, but also kind of build it into a more speculative side. Things, say, looking at what does this evolution look like past, prokaryotes? Like, what does it look like in larger order beings? What are those selective pressures? And then ultimately, what does the natural history look like? What are the other extinction events that are going to be happening? What are the other climate changes that are going to cause mass strife or a creation for stable Avali life? And that goes into what is the ecology of that going to look like? What creatures are there? What's there? What do ultimately the pre-Avali look like? We're calling them Avalids, which I think is really funny. But the near Avali raptors, what are they like? So there's lots of different ways to go. Obviously, medicine and physiology is probably going to be the stickier point, but the hope is that once we get to that point, it all should be pretty easy. So yeah. And at that point, thank you for listening to me, and I'll hand it off to Elia for hopefully more interesting early Avali history and the such.
Thank you kindly, Tycho.
Okay.
Again,
Tycho cute.
you're doing amazing work, Tycho. Thank you so much. Perfect. You're way ahead of me, Tholin. Thank you. Hello, I'm Elia Swuna. I go by both. You may know me as one or the other. Doesn't really matter. You can use either. And a lot of you were probably here for the panel we did last night on the history of Avali and the Illuminate. I'm going to touch on that a little bit, but this is going to be more of a broad sort of overview of just my role in the larger project as a whole, who I'm working with, what we're doing, and what we still need to do. So, if you'll go ahead, Thorn. So we've been working on a timeline, and we're going to see it shortly. A lot of you have heard it. History is very much not really a hard science in the same sense as like biology. With biology, we are beholden to the natural laws of, the universe. There are certain things that can and cannot happen. There are things that are factual. History, especially in creating a history that is more or less from the ground up of a completely alien civilization to like what we see here on Earth, there's a lot more flexibility with that. We obviously, a lot of the hard sciences play a part into this. We have how the geology of the planet forms, how that impacts the development of a species, how there's all sorts of cultural practices that come about through the various natural laws. All of these kind of feed back into one another, and it's a little bit of a cycle of where we have these amazing planets being worked on, this biology, and it comes and it creates this history that makes sense for a species, which then goes back into that. And it's a little bit of a self-feeding cycle, which is why as everybody progresses. Thankfully, still means we can do a lot of really cool writing and just be able to actually kind of get creative with it to get something that is enjoyable, that is fun, and just an expression of creativity on both our parts and just for everybody. History itself is basically, it's the record of what has happened. And since that may or may not have actually happened, there's a lot of room for us to write it. Go ahead, Dawn. Oh yeah, the delay. I forgot about that. So, a brief history. Again, I'm just going to briefly reiterate everything. What we have right now is a timeline, a rough outline of early Avalis from their first evolution from Avalids, as they crawled out of the primordial oceans, up until their flights into space, and to and from that. We have a lot of the early hunter-gatherer tribes, which would roam the planet, hunting resources, all the way to where they first had the very early settlements for the Avali, living on the coastline, pack trading, all sorts of that. From there, we go, obviously, to the Industrial Revolution, the rise of city-states all across Avalon, the growth of a monarchical illuminate, fascist illuminate. From there, war, which is, what is it good for? It's absolutely nothing. And from there, we kind of get more into the modern Avali. After all, we are space birds, so science explodes. Eventually, with the very crisis of the species faces, these are surpassed, and they eventually go forward into space. It's a bit of a rough timeline because we also have just so much to do and so much to take care of that we want to have plenty of opportunity for those little stories to be told. While an overview, an umbrella is nice to have, the personal history of Avali is written in the day-to-day. It's about individuals, which that is what we've avoided with so far, mostly because there's still a lot to be done, but also because we want to leave that as an opportunity. Tholin also went into it later, about going into space, the eventual rise of the Avalikin Union, and all of that. Like I said, there's vast quantities of time that we actually have to go over. So, a lot to do. Go ahead, Tholin. And with the need for a lot of history, obviously there is a lot to be written. There's a lot that we might need. This could very well be, experiences, things that you find interesting, things that could be, just something that's neat. From the smallest of tribes to the largest of entire city-states, celestial unions, all sorts of this. We've been laying the groundwork, and while we still have a lot to do, I keep saying that because, honestly, there's always so much more to do. It really kind of is reliant on you as well, because the species, it's only an idea without those who engage with it and who grow with it, which is where all of you come in. And honestly, I know Tholin's going to get a little bit more into it a bit later on how you can really help and contribute, but just that creativity that comes and it was within every single person who engages is what's going to help feed this, help make it grow, and help be it a beautiful thing that everybody can find a piece of themselves into. Go ahead.
That was it?
Oh no, my last slide. Darn, it had a flag. It's okay. Basically, Avali history is, there's going to be a lot more of it on the wiki project that we are working on. There will be full entries to read. You'll be able to read about early Avalids up to, the actual government of the Illuminate, pre and post revolution. There's a lot of minutia that will be tackled. And that'll obviously be coming in a more, a refined and formatted source. And that's really our goal, is moving forward, is to have things that you can kind of hyper fixate on, go in and read and kind of connect with. Thank you all. I'm going to give it to Tholin to take care of the rest of it.
No, this creature.
Oh my goodness, Echo, I'm so sorry. They were too small.
Absolutely.
So small.
Okay, I'm up here.
Good job.
What?
Maybe that's a bad idea. Whatever, we're rolling with it. Hi, everyone. I am Echo. I am working on culture and sociology. And what I've been doing, the way I've been going about it, is I've been interviewing people with strong feelings or memories from Avalon and kind of mapping out what regional culture looks like and trying to build profiles on those regions. And the three major regions that have come to light are northern, central, and southern Avalon, with a lot of variation between the regions. I've done a lot of interviews with people. I've been asking a lot of questions. And it's important to note that culture on Avalon is not a monolith, that many different cultures and ways of being have sprung up. It's a pretty large place. It's smaller than this world, but it's large on its own. Each region has different environmental and technological issues that need to be solved and accounted for, and each region has different practices and modes of being. I've interviewed people from various places, from nomadic tribes with trading outposts to agricultural regions to the city, the many cities along the coastline and along the equator. There's urbanized outskirts. There's cave dwelling Avali. There's Avali who gather around geothermic vents. and piecing this all together to look at the general trends and general leanings that seem to pop up over Avalon. It has been my main focus for a while. A lot of what I do, it depends on the history and biology of Avali. And so anything I do is subject to be tweaked or changed in a pretty major way, depending on where the rest of the team goes. As far as culture goes, there's a lot I've been able to get down. Already up on the wiki is an overview of what a pack looks like and how it's different across Avalon in particular. There's various forms of packs and ways to internalize them. I've talked a lot about pack bonding and the various difficulties that come with pack bonding. Most people know about pack loss or being pack broken. I have chronicled various methods of treating those. And then I've also talked about pack resistance, where it's kind of like neurodivergence when it comes to pack, where you have a hard time bonding, and innate pack resistance. I've also been doing a lot to discover what an Avali as an individual looks like and what they're empowered to do individually and how they express themselves. Along those same lines, I've talked about this quite a bit before, but Avali don't have an analog to gender directly, but there are certain categories that tend to pop up in how Avali categorize each other. I've done a lot of research into what tribes look like and what like mating and reproduction looks like, which is probably the most varied across the people I've interviewed and across the cultures. And then I've had a focus on what raising kits looks like, what hatcheries or raising without hatcheries looks like, and then the development of kits. Overall, there's a lot of exploration, and a lot of it is subject to change or subject to be different depending on history. But I'm piecing together what I can, where Suna and Tholin have been doing like macro history. I've really been digging into Avalon and like daily life, what it's like to exist there and what it's like to exist there in certain regions and at certain times. Most of the focus I've had, if you were at the history panel yesterday, is the post-Illuminate era as things are recovering from that monolithic giant, seeing how people have responded to that, how certain areas have been affected by it. And most of the history I've been given is in regards to areas that weren't benefited by or part of the Illuminate, and learning how to integrate back into larger Avalon after the events of the Illuminate changing significantly. I do also want to say, it wasn't said at the beginning, we will be taking questions afterwards. And so if you want to hang out and ask questions, that is okay. Another area of interest of mine is Avali psychology, which is very difficult to chronicle in a way that is readable, and I'm still working on that. I have quite a bit up on the wiki, and for anything that's not on the wiki, Tholin, next slide.
Oh my god, okay.
Good job, Echo.
Thank you.
Okay, so I'm going to be talking about astrophysics now. Let me get set up. I'm going to go a little fast, so we have as much time for questions as possible. So I've been mostly soloing astrophysics for actually a really long time, because what we have so far is a binary star system with a total of 38 celestial bodies. The map here shows just one of the two stars. And not only that, but I have full maps for each of these. For every planet, I have at least a terrain like height map, as well as a color map. And the reason for that is because I originally made this as for a Kerbal Space Program, as a Kerbal Space Program mod. And that was like a 2-year effort that I completed just as long ago. And all of the orbital mechanics and orbits in the thing are either based on or verified by simulations. Like I did a protoplanetary disk simulations in order to come up with some of this, so it's as accurate as possible. Or and that's kind of a problem though, the KSB thing, because it means that these plans were not designed to function in real life, and so I have to do a realism overhaul pass over everything in two ways. I have to consider both how could the actual physical descriptions and properties of the plans be more realistic, and how could the visuals be more realistic. As an example for the latter, the next slide here, when you see it, is going to show Avalon, how it was before I started doing this. So this was Avalon on initial release of the whole thing, of the mod. And then this next slide is Avalon as it looks like now, thanks to help from some of our experienced planet modders. And so the goal is to do this with everything, but then also kind of figure out my scientific accuracy, which is the big pain point right now. Like, what are the geological histories of these planets? What are their current chemical and geological compositions? Things that maybe don't show themselves visually, but are important to know anyway. And then I need to come up with how things got into this state, because solar systems evolve, they form, and it's a very dynamic process, and then things change over time. And so how did we get to where how things are now? When it comes to just the regular overhaul pass, the progress on that is I've completed the pass on 3 celestial bodies out of 30, which sounds pretty bad, but I can only walk on this on and off, and so this is actually the result of about like 3 or 4 weeks of walk. So it's not too bad. However, I do want to say that some of these celestial bodies will be easier to overhaul than others. Like all the little asteroid moons, for instance, will be easier. And so there will be spikes in progress and then large breaks as things get harder or easier. And of course, there's Avalon. Avalon needs special attention, obviously, and it's like, I really, really want to get that one right, so I'm kind of afraid to touch this one, because I couldn't even pass my geology classes in high school, so I'm not touching that. And so I'm looking for help with that, but more about that at the end. So, astrophysics, where we make cool sites like this. That's on Avalon, by the way, that's another planet, but yeah. Okay, and I'm going to touch on this one only briefly. I've been trying to narrow down the politics of the Illuminate Republic, at the very least, and that has involved writing, exactly, attempt to describe the government, the legal systems, the economic systems, and I'm already 2 very long wiki pages deep on defining the government after the revolution, and I need to go back and add more detail, but I don't think it's enough yet. And it seems mostly sound, again, just like history. This one is not an exact science, but I have taken a look at a lot of real governments, a lot of hypothetical things that people have come up with in order to inspire myself and come up with something that hopefully works. Again, assistance is needed, especially with things like the legal system and economy. I have no idea about those things. I'm too afraid to touch those out of fear of messing up. It's pretty low. The whole thing's pretty low on the priority list anyway, because it's not something that a lot of people are interested in. But yeah, that's that. So if that, I need some more time. Sorry. If that interests you, you can message me. Okay. And I also want to take a moment, actually, to give a shout out to all the artists who are helping us visualize the wiki, because it would be a pretty dry wiki if it was just several, like dozen to 100 pages of just black on white text without any pretty images to look at, without any visualizations. You've already seen my bad graphic design skills on the previous slide, so I won't mention those. We have, for instance, a lot of love for the astrophysics stuff right now. We have a painting by Garrett of Solarku. I personally can actually make these pretty decent looking renders of the celestial bodies. Quote unquote, that's actually a Kerbal Space Program screenshot on the right.
That's cool.
And of course, we have graphic designers as well. As for instance, the flag of the Avalikin Union was designed by Darcy, and we also have... They're right there. They're right up there. And we also have Ember, not the shark one, the Avali one, contributing some things. Okay. So now that you've received all of this information, I want to talk a little bit more about exactly what our approach is, how I'm generating this and this information. And well, right now we're focused on doing foundation building, because when we first started this project, we were kind of disorganized for a really long time until I decided that actually the way we should approach this is by setting certain foundations first and then branching other aspects of the lore out from that. For instance, and Tycho has already demonstrated this with his last slide earlier, biochemistry is something that we need to get done before we can talk about biology, before we can talk about ecosystems, before we can talk about even psychology to a certain degree, because the environment that a species evolved in kind of determines how it is psychologically by default a little bit. So, but another big pillar we have right now is history, because history strongly influences culture. So we can derive cultural aspects for different time periods from history. And technology as well, because technology is not just this linear path where you have the invention of fire on one end and spaceships on the other, and it's like always the same. Technology is a really, really complex tree with millions of branches, and how a civilization decides to use their science points in a tech tree is very individual. It's very unique. And so in history it plays a big role in that. Of course, there's a feedback path the other way around as well. Like culture can have an impact on history, and technology can have an impact on history. So there's a feedback as well. However, for getting started on such a massive project, I think this is a good approach, and we'll be able to figure out these feedback paths later on. But first, we need something that we can use as a basis to start out with, to even have a strong foundation to build things on top of. Geology should technically also be one of those pillars, at least when it comes to Avalon, because it has a big effect on biology, as we've seen, and it also has an effect on history. Like, if you think about how many wars on Earth are fought over resources. But it's like the one major thing we're missing in a team right now is geology talent. The good thing is we're getting really far with history, and so once we believe that once we're done with that, we're on strong footing. That's at least the idea for a lot of things that folks are working on. So what's missing? Well, as I just said, we're missing a lot of geology in an astrophysics context, especially also known as planetary sciences. Biochemistry, biology, I think Tycho would always appreciate more help reading through dozens of science papers. It's
too many.
Too many, yeah. We've also wanted to have at least one constructed language of an Avali language spoken on Avalon, but progress on that has basically almost completely stalled because we're missing a lot of talent on there. And of course, what I said earlier about needing help with economy, legal systems. Technology as well, because technology is a very broad thing. There's a lot of different types of technology. For instance, I'm an integrated circuit layout engineer, and a process architecture engineer, so I can go on for days about Avali integrated circuits and processors. But maybe someone knows something about some engineering field, and maybe they can contribute knowledge about their specific field to the lore. And so that's basically a never-ending need for when it comes to technology lore. It's just so broad. And so, if you are someone who can answer any of the following questions, please DM me immediately. I'm going to give a few examples. So, for instance, one of the things that I have to ask myself a lot lately is why he look like that? Because I have things like the planet Solvis with its moon Mol, and now I'm very much in the finding out part, because when I was making this for KSP as a mod, I was like, yeah, that would look cool if it had like two halves like that. And now it's like 2 years later, I'm like, oh, why does it look like that? How does that make any sense? Oh god. And I have to answer these questions. Also, why is it green or like tealish? And of course, also, how did this happen? How did this happen? Because, as I said, solar systems have kind of an evolutionary history, and this solar system is actually kind of quirky the way it has a gas giant, then an ice giant, and then a gas giant in that order. That's actually kind of weird. So again, how did this come to be? How did things come together to form this system? Yeah, so if you can answer any of these following questions, also please DM me, because these are going to be on geology. So, as context, Avalon, the moon is covered in a thick layer of frozen volatiles, so that's frozen water ice and frozen ammonia ice. However, tidal heating with its parent gas giant maintains underground pockets of liquid, so not like a full-on underground ocean like Europa, more like flooded caves that are being warmed up. And so what are the implications of this on plate tectonics, right? How does this mess with the fault lines? And what does this mean for the accessibility of ores if the surface is completely covered in ice? And what early geology would there have been that early Avalids could have taken advantage of, like ore deposits, things like that, or maybe just the shape of the terrain, because it's like it's ice. And also the oceans of Avalon consist of a water and ammonia mix, as Tycho discussed. And so what are the implications of that on the water, or I guess ammonia cycle, like the rain, like things evaporating and raining down? I already know that rainwater has a completely different ratio of water and ammonia because ammonia evaporates more readily. So what effects does this have on erosion? For also things of that nature. So if you can answer these questions, or you're just a space astronomy nerd like me, or you paid attention during your geology classes unlike me, or you have ever made or helped make a conlang, or have studied linguistics, or if you've studied any organic chemistry or just chemistry overall, or you're active in some kind of engineering or tech field that you're passionate about, or then you can join the team potentially. You can message me. Please message me on Discord. That's my Discord username. I'm in the Avalikin server, so you should be able to message me. And maybe we can get something going. I'm accepting applications, basically. So now we're taking questions. So first of all, maybe a little bit of an applause for everyone who has volunteered to come out here today with me and be on stage. And then if people could form a line here in front of the stage, and you can have the microphone.
Okay.
Then yeah, if you have a question, just line up.
All right, fire. I mean,
No.
And
And
it's about
you go
bathrooms.
first.
I do have a railgun trained on this location.
Oh god.
so
So do I.
Avalis do drink water, right?
Trace.
It,
Trace.
is it good?
The microphone.
Yeah, we can do
I
that.
think we should have
So,
someone just volunteer to grab the mic and talk about it.
That's just part of the question, though.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
All right. So, if they do drink water, but the water is mixed with ammonia,
Most of this.
what would happen exactly? And what would happen if they would drink normal water with that ammonia in it?
They need both water and ammonia to survive, so I'm pretty sure they would develop some sort of disease if they drank only one.
I have a good answer for this. So, humans can't drink just water either. They need salt and potassium in particular, but there's other electrolytes they need. Ammonia is like that, where it's a building block that is needed for them to continue to survive at all. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well,
Alright, Emma.
Thank you.
Next person.
Whatever.
Yeah, hi.
Take this.
Yes, hang on. Looks tasty. Oh,
Oh no.
No, we've only got one.
apologies.
It's been 0 days.
So
Now we have to
yeah,
go get it.
my question would have been like, how do eclipses on Avalon looks like? Because they are like the moon is like orbiting a gas giant, so like is the sun just like completely gone from the sky, or like how does that look?
So the moons, oh sorry, the other moons are very unlikely to cause eclipses.
No, I meant the gas giant
However,
itself, like
the gas giant, yes, the gas giant causes an eclipse every single day because it's so big, but only in the half of Avalon that faces it. You get about like an hour or so of additional darkness every day from the gas giant. That is true.
Oh, that does sound like the perfect time to take a nap if you ask me.
More sleep then.
Yes.
Siesta
More sleep is
time.
always good.
Please, more sleep. Sleep is for the weak, and I am weak.
Also,
Be right back.
also if like no one else is having any questions about that, like how the early Avali got like their ores out of the ground or whatever you said.
How the earlier Valley got the ores out of the ground. Anyone have an answer for that?
I mean, yeah, like because I actually have worked off some theories about that.
I am
I
a
like
dwarf.
this.
Yeah.
Digging a hole.
So,
Make
because
it
of the amount of ice and everything on Avalon's surface and how much of it is not readily accessible to traditional, like, you know, open pit mining and like exposed ore veins and such, a lot of it would have been localized kind of around near the coast where the erosion from the ocean as would be able to kind of wear away those minerals, as well as deposits from like the seafloor and underneath the ice being sort of dredged up a little bit over time through to the currents. So a lot of it would be initially focused along resource hotspots near
Okay.
like either like taller mountains along like geographic fault lines and such like that, or ocean areas where the planet kind of, you know, gives them a little bit of a nudge, like, you know, cheats enabled.
Okay. Interesting. Because like maybe like you like earlier you could have also like gotten their like iron and stuff from like meteor impacts, or I don't know.
I think I would capture
Yeah,
most of
I mean, I can add a little bit to this.
Oh,
if you
hello,
want. I
here
don't
you
know.
go.
Or I'll
Thank
let
you.
Pendrin get it.
Two questions. I'm gonna start with one that's less serious. What did you say about a railgun being pointed here? First of all,
I cannot confirm nor deny anything. Don't worry about it. Don't worry about it.
okay. Yeah, so I was thinking about this during history presentation yesterday. How did the Avali do things with steam power with their? I mean, I know that they're like 40% water now, but how do they do things with steam power and like stuff that requires heat without getting severely hurt because of the temperatures?
Hold on. Consider that even humans would be severely hurt by the temperature of steam.
Steam is very hot. They would be in a unique position because of just the overall lower temperature, but yeah, hot things do remain hot. They would work their own methods out. I mean, another thing is like how Avalon doesn't really have oil deposits or coal, so there'd be a lot more of a focus initially on early charcoal development, then moving on to like steam power and stuff. Yeah, that's a table. Oh no.
The development of insulation also came very, very early because you have to retain the heat in order to use it. So one of the very first problems to solve is how do we insulate this heat from the environment, and also how do we insulate this heat from ourselves. So where early in the tech tree, insulation is one of the most important things to get solved, and that was solved as early as possible.
So what I'm hearing is that basically being around hot machinery isn't as much of a problem for them because one, the environment is colder, two, they have insulation. And the other question, you said the history is mostly done, like culture is done. I assume that what was no.
So the things that have been presented in the last 2 days have been rough outlines. There's a lot of specifics to flesh out. I'm still working on culture as a day-to-day thing, and I'm trying to get a lot of smaller stories that I can then build into a bigger picture. There's still a lot of gaps missing. I specifically need to interview some people with strong memories or feelings about living in the metropolitan areas. That's a big blind spot for me, but arguably one of the most important. I would say it's not done. I don't think it'll ever be done. Like, it's going to constantly develop. And right now, the amount of stuff that I have and the rest of the team has is building blocks more than a complete thing.
I have a little to add on that, actually. Oh, sorry. Yeah, it's definitely not done. There's still like so much like opportunity and potential. It's almost as if to little gamify it a little bit. It's as if we have the eras defined in like a game like Civilization. Like we have a rough like kind of thing to follow, and now is just actually kind of zooming in and looking at that details. There's still a lot to be done. Just because we have somewhere to stand, just because we have a foundation, doesn't mean the house is done yet.
Sorry, is there like
Thank you. I think they're forming a line. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, at some point the next person should get to ask a question.
Yeah, I know. Last thing. Are you looking... I didn't get the impression that you were... Are you looking for people with an experience in world building to help with this or to help with culture? That's the last question.
That's a tholin question.
That is definitely a tholin question.
Hold on.
Okay.
I guess. I guess maybe.
I don't know.
Well, it's not mine.
I can talk about
I
this.
accidentally talked that. I didn't mean to.
Okay. As far as culture and world building, there's a lot of approaches that are being taken. As a culture lead, I am specifically trying to piece together experiences from the community in like I want to hear about their life or what they feel, and then build culture from there. There's a lot of line blurring when it comes to, am I making something up versus experience of Theri and Avali versus all this kind of things to weigh in. So because of the intersection between otherkin or Therian feelings and world building and what would otherwise be fiction, there's a lot of sensitivity needed, and we want to get a pretty good framework going before we do an explosive development thing. We will be looking for more contributors in the future with culture, but right now it's in a really sensitive phase, and if we get a bunch of people in, there's going to be a lot of contradictions to fix and a lot of feelings that will be hurt. So we're trying to get that framework in first before doing much more with culture. I am waiting for a lot of history. I am still doing info gathering, but there's not a big enough framework to have a bunch of people in the cultural section at this moment. There will be at some point, and we'll make calls for that when it happens. But at the moment, to avoid people's feelings being hurt, to avoid conflict or other issues, we're just getting the framework built.
Okay, that is all. Thank you.
Very eloquent.
Thanks.
Yes, hi, me again. I just thought of 2 more questions that I would need to answer. First of all, like, how does Avalon get like protected from solar flares and like cosmic radiation? Does it have like its own magnetic field, or is it more like the gas giant's magnetic field is sort of giving the extra protection?
Yes.
I thought magnetosphere was a superhero.
Avalon does not need protection from solar flares because there are no solar flares. A-type stars are known to be particularly quiescent and friendly because their outer layer is radiative, not convective, so you do not get any plasma currents that could induce solar flares. It's a very calm star. It does not produce flares in the first place.
Interesting. Yeah, but like, what about you know, the like cosmic radiation? Like, what about that? Like, does it just get like?
If anything, Valaia's magnetic field actually funnels charged particles at the poles of Avalon. It's better. It's more safe towards the equator. But this is why Tycho talked so much about PNA being resistant to radiation.
Oh, okay, fair enough. All right, and for my
It's one of the
second
big
question,
considerations, yeah.
like what's the like opinion of like, you know, Avali like towards other cultures? So like, I don't know, like alien life forms, are they like cooperative? Or are they like xenophobes? Like, what is it?
Can I answer this one?
Yeah.
The opinions differ per pack, per tribe, just like any other enormous civilization. There's eras where Avali were more xenophobic. There's eras where they're more open. But to put them all in a monolith is something that is an impossibility. It depends on the region. It depends on the government of that region and the opinions of the tribes in general. There's a tendency towards caring about the needs of your tribe over the needs of others. But it's just a tendency, and it becomes more complicated the more you zoom in. There's not an answer to that can encompass Avali culture.
So basically like just sort of a broad spectrum of things that like vary from individual packs. Basically, that's okay.
Yeah, like
Okay, that makes sense.
Avali are intelligent. And they're not a monoculture, and trying to reduce them down into one is what we're specifically trying to avoid with the depth that we're going into this lore project.
Fine, yes. Right.
Okay. Next person.
Alright, so
I think we wanted to ask a question. I don't know.
Any more questions? Just step up.
So I do have a question more about.
Come grab the mic so everybody can hear you.
Oh.
Yeah,
You should come grab the mic.
you matter.
Hi, Daddy.
Crazy. So I do have a question about, I guess, the ecology of the Avalis, like how they do their research in ecology. So who would I talk to about that?
That's
sort of
probably a
thing?
Tycho question, I think. Maybe. I think it might be a
Tycho?
Tycho question.
Yeah.
It sounds Tycho-y.
I mean, it's good to remember that we're not quite that far on the project yet. Our primary focus here was identifying molecular biology to see what the standpoint is. I do think the ecology is really cool. As Tholin had mentioned earlier, a lot of hard science world building, and understand when I say hard science, we are going to get to hard science, and then once we get outside of like the cell and like how basic energy structures work, at that point, I mean, we're already in speculative stuff, but you're building speculative on speculative. At what point is it too far away, right? To the ecology, that's a great point. So you have to think about like what are different flora, what are different fauna, what are their niches, what does a food web look like, right? What do the biomes look like? Now we understand that there seems to at least be for Avali culture like 3 distinct places, but as far as the flora there and the fauna there, that's going to determine what is there. Period. I know I'm kind of giving you a non-answer just because it's not quite there yet as far as what we have. Obviously, there are creatures on Avalon. There are, I guess, different projects that have been done specifically looking at megafauna. So whether those megafauna still exist or have gone extinct is a question. What I'm assuming, as we see here, if there are any near Avali raptors or avalids, if they're, how exactly they disappeared, or maybe are they even still around secretly? Who knows? You know, it's the cool part of looking at projects like this, where we're not necessarily as strictly bound. So in short, it's still kind of up in the air. We do know that most plants of some kind are going to be purple because we expect, as we've seen in most art, and considering how bright the sun is, that it's going to have to use something other than chlorophyll. So it's going to be cool. But yeah, I'm always interested in ideas. If everybody has ideas, again, I'm definitely working bottom up, so it's going to be a little bit before I get there. But once I exit, like the hard molecular biology, things get a lot faster. So hopefully that answers at least some of your question.
Yeah, it does a little bit. Thank you.
Yeah, of course.
Okay, any more questions or?
Can I steal that for a sec?
Yep.
I'm not here to contribute. I'm just here for moral support and call all these bunch of a pile of hardworking cuties.
Yay.
Okay. Then I think it's time to set up for the next thing. It's gonna be whatever Frost is cooking for us. Frost, where are you?